Hey, hello everyone. So my name's Jon Hewitt. I'm a creative director at a design studio called Moving Brands. Originally, I'm from Jersey, but maybe not the Jersey that you know. Actually, this Jersey, which is a little island in the Channel Islands. It's just off the coast of France. Very beautiful, very small place to grow up. So I got into computers when I was a teenager, and I wanted to go and do stuff to do with computers at university. So I went to learn about interaction design, except this was the early 2000s, so interaction design was called new media. And new media was great because we learned how to make films, we learned how to do sound design, we did graphic design and art direction, learned about this thing called multimedia where we made CD-ROMs, we did loads of stuff like that. And after I graduated, I wanted to get a job, and I wanted to work in design, and I found this studio in London called Moving Brands, and at the time it was about 40 people and one studio. 10 years later, so I've been there 10 years, almost actually to the day. 10 years later, it's 100 people, and we're in 4 locations: London, San Francisco, New York, and Zurich. And we get to work with some great businesses, some of whom are here today, actually, and we help them with their brands, and we work with them on their digital products, and we help them with filmmaking and storytelling. Back to 2006. So I arrived at Moving Brands as a graduate, and within first few weeks of being at Moving Brands, we were just doing loads of different stuff. We were making a music video for this band called Cub. We were doing interactive installations for London College of Fashion to help their students showcase their work. We were working on a global redesign of this company you might have heard of called Nokia, although they're not around quite so much anymore. And working on more sort of traditional stuff, like this is an identity for a luxury fashion brand called Norton & Sons. But I think that the overriding philosophy at Moving Brands and why we were doing all these different things is the belief that brands aren't built through guidelines and logos. They're not built through corporate values in PowerPoint decks. They're built through the experiences that people pick up and use, the things that they use day in, day out, that they fall in love with. That's where brands are built. It's not always been that way, though. The sort of industry of branding has sort of come from this mindset of create a logo and stamp it everywhere. This is a book that I've got, which always makes me laugh. It's published in 1971, and it's called A Management Guide to Corporate Identity. And the overriding philosophy is you design a logo, and then you just apply it you stamp it on uniforms, and you stamp it on liveries and stationery. And it's really led to this kind of culture of branding being thought of as, just stamp a logo everywhere. And I think that's true, of course, of advertising as well. I think there's a bit of a similar thing in advertising, which is just repeat the same message over and over again until people believe it. But as product designers and product managers, I think you are in a very powerful position because you're able to create these positive experiences that are memorable. We've lived through this incredible time recently where all these businesses have come along, not just the ones on screen, but many of the businesses that you're in. And they've disrupted and they've created these incredible experiences that people love. And it's not about their ad campaign, it's not about their logo, it's about the actual product experience. But as the dust from the disruption settles, we're sort of moving into a phase, I think, that looks a bit like this. These are 3 services I use in London to get around, and they're all very similar proposition, very similar look and feel. And I think the question that's emerging is how can we differentiate our products? How can we be memorable, and how can we use design to be memorable? So looking at a sideways industry, so looking at industrial design, this is some work from an industrial designer called Ross Lovegrove. On the left, an everyday water bottle. On the right, some very, very expensive speakers from a company called Kef. But Ross Lovegrove's got this amazing style where he uses these very organic liquid forms, and they've almost become signature to him. They're recognizable as his style. And that idea of a signature look or a signature moment, I think is true, and you see it in many other industries. You see it in the automotive industry as well. Things like the BMW grille, that's very iconic and very recognizable on its own. And I think these things pass the logo test. If you cover up the logo, you're still able to recognize where they're from, and that's hugely important. Back to digital product design, these are 3 food ordering services I use in London, and not so differentiated. If you cover up the logo, you'd be hard-pressed to tell whose is whose. Same art direction, same proposition, same user experience framework. So how can we start to differentiate in digital product design? How can we create those moments that are recognizable and memorable and help people fall in love with the product? I think there's a few places. There's micro interactions as design signatures, so things like tap to love from Periscope. I think motion and transitions can be a huge place, a huge source of creating these memorable and beautiful moments that help people fall in love with your product. Flipboard did that brilliantly, and we got to work with Flipboard very early on in their life and help them with some of these things. But also the overall interaction framework as well. So, for example, the messaging framework that Quartz use, which is kind of memorable in its own right. And there's some more obvious ones as well. There's things like visual design and tone of voice and sound design. But all these things can come together, I think, to help make a product memorable. But I think what's really important is that those moments are coming from the proposition of the product. They're helping to reinforce the thing that's unique about the product, the thing that people want to use the product for. I wanted to share a case study with you, a piece of work we've worked on with the BBC, and it's a product called Newsbeat. And Newsbeat is their youth news service. This is what it used to look like before we started working with them. And it's an alternative point of view from BBC News. It's aimed at 14 to 24-year-olds, and it's competing with the likes of Vice and BuzzFeed for those people's attention. And they were really struggling to kind of win the eyeballs of those people. And they were going through a big transformation. The editorial team and the UX team were working very closely together to help transform the whole service, and we got involved with them and helped them to do that. So we knew that we wanted to build from the credibility of the BBC, all the great things that the BBC is known for, things like impartiality and accuracy, but we knew we wanted to build in personality as well, something that felt unique to Newsbeat. So what we started to look at was helping them really clarify their proposition, so this idea, this concept that sat at the heart of the product, this idea of being always about the beat, bold, loud, always driving forward, but also being offbeat, marking a break from the regular. And we tried to use that as a way to start to build in design signatures, especially around motion, that could help to create something that felt delightful and felt different and felt right for Newsbeat. So I'm going to show a film, and it just tells you the little journey that we went through with BBC Newsbeat in terms of the design process. So with Newsbeat, we were interested in this idea of playing around with this idea of being offbeat and not always lining up and offering this different point of view on the news that Newsbeat offered over the traditional BBC News. And so that was kind of built into the logo. We were interested in this idea of it always being in motion, always kind of slightly misaligning and then coming into alignment. And we worked very closely with the BBC's UX team and helped look at how we could build those moments into the actual product itself. So building that motion in as a design signature. So it's triggered as you scroll down the news feed of the main native app product. And also little moments like pull to refresh triggers this animation. But we're also keen to take that motion behavior and start to think about how it comes into the actual app itself. So things like as you're swiping down the newsfeed, various modules start out of alignment and then come into alignment, and just trying to reinforce that story. And I think what was great was we, as well as working with the UX team around the native app and the responsive web products, we also got to work with the editorial team who make content and push content out through BBC's own VOD platform, iPlayer, as well as YouTube. And we were working with them on how can they take some of those moments and use them in their own title sequences, for example. So what we were trying to get to was this sort of ecosystem of all the Newsbeat stuff, from the two products, the native app and responsive web product, the things like communications through Twitter and various social channels, as well as the actual editorial content that you can sit and watch on your TV. So connecting those things together with these design signatures. And I think what's really exciting is at the BBC, you know, they're known as a broadcaster, but they've actually got a very big digital team. They've got 150 full-time user experience designers who work across the various different digital products the BBC offer. And they're going through a really exciting and interesting time at the moment where they're looking at what are those overriding design signatures that can help connect up all the different BBC products, and needing to do across, you know, a very big portfolio of products, needing to connect them and make them feel like a family, but also allow them to talk to the different audiences that they need to serve in the best way possible. So I think within the realm of digital product design, design signatures can really come into the interaction framework, micro-interactions, motion and transition, as well as more obvious things like visual design, sound design, and tone of voice. They can help to create really memorable products, but they can also help to really amplify the proposition of your product. And if used well, they can also connect together this big portfolio if you work in a business that has multiple products. And it can help leverage the positive experiences that you get in one moment and take that across the whole business. So thank you very much. You can reach us at the normal social channels. We're at Moving Brands. Thank you.